Okay, for a really long time I've wanted to try and replicate one of my favorite pours, this red base with a black and white split stack straight pour, which turned out really well back in my first few months of pouring. And let's give the second try a go. I've also learned over time that less silicone is often better than more silicone, so for this pour I use 2 drops, which for the simplicity of this pour is enough, and try not to over stir your silicone as it can distort the cells you're going to be making with too much stirring. And in the spirit of Christmas, this happens to be what's called a Christmas red acrylic. I happen to buy from the dollar store, so fairly inexpensive, and is a very deep red, so this is why I'm hoping for some really good results with how my cells may come and pop through later on. Okay, I'm going to let that settle for a few minutes and prepare my cup for the split stack pour, pardon me, and this is going to be an alternating split stack, so I go from black and white on each side, trying to keep the colors as equal as possible, and then stopping, and then of course switching sides with my white coming to what is our left side and black going to the right side. I'm also keeping in mind I am trying to actually replicate that previous painting I showed you at the beginning, and doing everything exactly as I remember and watching my video back on how many layers I used, which was 3, black and white 3 times on each side, and then just simply doing a straight pour right off the hop. So almost finished here with my paint stacking, and we'll get to the pouring in a second. Okay, and here's our base that has settled for a few minutes, and again I love that deep red of the Christmas red for our base, and here's our black and white. I'm going to try to keep as even as possible with my straight pour, ring pour I suppose, and try to keep as much in the center as possible, also knowing I have a rectangle canvas versus my 8x8 square I used on the first painting. So far so good, and we'll see how things turn out with our silicone and cells in a few seconds here. Okay, and after a few minutes of settling, I'm just taking a quick break to let that paint move back and forth. I want to try to get it as even as possible across the canvas to make sure that I have good coverage before I begin to tilt. And I found this was, I had actually way too much paint in on this canvas, so I'm being cautious and going fairly slow to make sure I can get, again, as much canvas covered as possible, but also not wanting to tilt it off the side just yet. I also really like the pattern right in the middle, kind of squiggly ring pour that didn't quite turn out as a ring, but I liked the design and the pattern to it and wanted to keep it in the middle, and wanted it to be kind of a focus point if I could manage it, rather than begin to tilt off the sides. So I'm trying to keep it in the middle before I begin to dump my paint off the sides. Okay, and for me, when I use silicone, I always use my torch to activate the silicone for the sake of the cells, hoping to help them expand and possibly open up a bit more before I tilt and then dump my paint off. I knew on top of what I'd done so far that this pour wasn't going to take long because I had a lot of paint, but I didn't want to distort my cells or pattern too much. Again, trying to make the previous pour I done going back some months and have that red pop through. Now, having torched the canvas with the paints, knowing that the cells eventually, if I stretch far enough, would begin to pop through, and you can actually see them there in the bottom and top, I believe, of the painting, kind of begin to peek through, which is just what I wanted. As I got to the last corner of my tilt, I was actually very happy with the pattern that we wound up with in the middle with that squiggly failed ring pour, but I was loving how it looked and decided to keep it as is, so my tilt didn't go that long. And I thought, hey, we're all done here, I'll put it down and begin to, again, torch again to help those cells open back up and we can see the red are beginning to pop through in the corners. And I may have overdone the torch a little bit over time here, but ultimately we can see the red on a ×20 time lapse here really peek through and become quite vibrant and really red, and I was really happy with how this one turned out. And if you have enjoyed this video so far, please hit that like button. I do appreciate your support, so thanks for watching. Now, which pour do you prefer? This one being a bit lighter, or the first pour coming up here I did going back some months into my first few pours? Do you prefer the lighter version or darker? Let me know in the comments below, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on either of them as feedback to me. So thank you again for watching. Here's a bit of a flyby of the wet look a bit closer in. So I love again that red that popped through the black and white. I think it looks great, and actually over time I'd expand it a little bit more and looks really great. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again.